Okay, seeing that it is 6:59 p.m., I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order with a reminder to silence, that we're going to be recording this and broadcasting this electronically on Facebook and cable. Mrs. Williams, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Paul Alexander.
Here.
Ms. Shantae Jones.
Here.
Mr. Carlos Vargas.
Here.
Ms. Rachel Kirkland.
Here.
Madam Chair, Ms. Stacy Fleming will not be attending tonight's meeting.
And I do want to get in that reminder to silence your electronic devices, please. Mr. Alexander, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
Yeah. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do we have any additions and corrections to the agenda? Seeing none, can I get a motion for approval of the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda. Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposition? Motion carries. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Can I get a motion for the consent agenda?
Move to approve consent agenda. Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
All right.
Thank you. Next up, Superintendent Spotlight. Dr. Saunders.
Good evening. I'm going to introduce Ms. Grosser, our Communications Director, to share some wonderful news going on in the division. I think I can find this. No. Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and get started while we work on the presentation. Good evening, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the board. I think you're really going to enjoy our spotlight this evening because tonight we're highlighting two pretty incredible students from our high school. Our first spotlight tonight recognizes the academic achievement of Manassas Park High School senior Braden Wentz. Braden has been named a semifinalist in the National Merit Scholarship Program. Braden is one of only 16,000 students from across the nation to be named as a semifinalist in the 67th annual program conducted by the National Merit Scholarship Corporation. A little bit about the National Merit Program. The scholarship program is an academic competition for recognition and scholarships that began in 1955. Approximately 1.5 million high school students enter the program each year. The nationwide pool of semifinalists represents less than 1% of U.S. high school seniors. Braden entered the 2022 National Merit Scholarship Program by taking the 2020 preliminary SAT National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test. Of the 1.5 million entrants, some 50,000 with the highest selection index scores qualify for recognition in the National Merit Scholarship Program. In early September, about 16,000 students, or approximately 1/3 of those 50,000 high scorers, were notified that they have qualified as semifinalists. And one of those 16,000 in the nation is sitting here with us tonight. Please join me in congratulating Braden Wentz for this great accomplishment. Just have it right here and then we'll have that in the back.
Chair on the way, or move the chair?
No, you're all right. Thank you. All right, one.
Smile.
They'll know if you're not. And would parents like to join us for a picture? Good to be in a picture. Don't worry, I got you on here.
Congrats, Braden.
right, our next spotlight tonight recognizes the musical talent of Manassas Park High School junior Christian Leon. Christian was one of only 25 students from the area recently accepted into the National Symphony Orchestra Youth Fellowship Program in Washington, D.C. This prestigious program is an orchestral training program for serious music students interested in pursuing orchestral music as a career. Open by audition only, this full scholarship program provides high school students in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area the opportunity to study with a National Symphony Orchestra or Washington National Opera Orchestra musician. They get to observe rehearsals and attend concerts, rehearse side by side with the NSO and participate in chamber music ensembles, master classes, and discussions with musicians, conductors, guest artists, and NSO and Kennedy Center management. The program's goal is to provide young musicians with the skills and knowledge to pursue a 21st century career in music. The program will also focus on college readiness and citizen artistry. This is a monitored, performance-oriented program designed to encourage students to become professional orchestral musicians. Past NSO Youth Fellowship participants have gone on to achieve great success with orchestras throughout the country. Christian's instrument of choice is a French horn. However, on the day I went in to take his picture for this presentation that I can now show you, let's start with Braden. There we go. I learned that not only was it pajama day, but when Christian came up and I met him in the office, he was not carrying a French horn. Now, I don't know a whole lot about instruments, but I knew that was not a French horn. And I learned that day that not only is he talented enough to be an NSO fellowship youth member of this program, he also is skilled at playing, I think it was a flute, and several other instruments as well. Please join me in congratulating Christian for this tremendous opportunity.
Oops.
That's okay. Finally, I would like to take a moment this evening to mention several recognitions for the month of October. All of our schools are participating in National Bully Prevention Month. This month has extra significance this year with the need for social and emotional supports as our students have transitioned from virtual learning to hybrid learning and once again to fully in-person learning. Last week, our students and staff had a Blue Up Day for bully prevention, in addition to Spirit Weeks this week and next week to help bring attention and awareness to bully prevention. All schools continue this year to have a focus on social and emotional learning to be sure our students have the supports they need to feel secure and to be successful in the classroom. In addition to Bully Prevention Month, we recognize several other important dates in October, including National Custodians Day, Farm to School Month, and Disability Awareness Month. Thank you for your attention and for your support of these two impressive students in our spotlight tonight. Thank you so much. And thank you both for taking the time to come out to join us this evening and celebrate your accomplishments with us. You know, we've both been in the school system for a long time, and I've gotten to watch you grow up, and it's just could not be prouder of your accomplishments. So thank you both very much. And Mr. and Mrs. Wentz, I know this is a great year for you, so congratulations again. Anything else from the rest of the board? Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to public comments. Christian, I just texted to see if your ride was here. Moving on to public comments. Do we have... Mrs. Williams, do we have anyone signed up for public comments?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay, let me go ahead and read the guidelines. Individuals who wish to address the school board should sign the list maintained on the desk in front of the school board clerk prior to the start of the regular board meeting. When called to the podium, please say your name and address for the record. Limit your comments to 3 minutes. Mrs. Williams will be timing your comments, and she will raise your hand when you have reached 3 minutes. The board will not give feedback to your comments or questions during public comment time Should your comments warrant a response, Dr. Saunders will work with her staff to address the concerns and questions raised and will provide a response in a timely fashion.
May I, Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
I think we discussed
This isn't right.
last time.
If
If
you are
they
a
are-
school employee,
Right.
you can merely say the school that you're employed at. You do not need to state
Your
your
address.
address if you're a school employee. Thank you for the clarification, Mr. Vargas. Okay, Mrs. Williams.
Ms. Shante Slaughter.
Just kidding, guys. I have to take these off because I can't see this with them on. So, are we ready, Dana?
I'm ready.
Okay. Good evening, Board. We come to you all tonight to propose a change to allow special education teachers and instructional assistants to be compensated under a separate pay scale due to the high demand of our jobs. A special education teacher is required to complete the same task as a regular education teacher. However, a special educator's job has many other facets. We are asked to do more with less every day. The amount of paperwork alone is enough to drive many out of our field. We are constantly being asked to give more and more, and even though we rise to the challenge, we are not compensated. Most of us work additional hours from home almost daily in order to make sure we are meeting our students' needs. From developing and modifying lesson plans, writing quality IEPs, creating tracking forms, behavior plans, grading papers, completing progress notes, contacting parents and teachers, and the list goes on. The teacher must also be knowledgeable of federal and state laws and ensure we remain in compliance. All of these things come with a price. We are missing out on time with our families because we are bound by law to ensure that our students' needs are met, and there are only so many hours in a school day. During the school day, we're pulled in many different directions. Some days, we have to cover other teachers' classes during our planning, therefore limiting what we can accomplish in a day. If a student on our caseload is having an issue, we are called to help diffuse the situation, oftentimes being pulled from planning, lunch, or even class. Some teachers at the elementary level are having to go without planning or a lunch on a daily basis to ensure their students' needs are met. Most of us do these things with a smile on our face as we know it is the right thing to do for our students. It's obvious we are here for our students, otherwise we wouldn't go that extra mile. But we often feel like we're being taken advantage of. No other content area is asked to do what we are. When COVID hit, we were the first teachers back in the building working with students. We stepped up to the plate and wrote addendum after addendum as our world was changing every day. We worked with students in person and via Zoom to make sure we were meeting all of our students' needs. Each building is down at least one special education teacher, if not more, which leads to larger caseloads and more on our plate as we have to share the burden of working a larger caseload. Most of us are beyond exhausted, and it is only the first 9 weeks. The morale has been low for the last 17 months, and we don't see any light at the end of the tunnel. We know money is not a cure-all, but in life, we need money to survive. Most of us have second and third jobs to make ends meet. An increase in salary with a separate pay scale for special education teachers and IAs would make Manassas Park more competitive and help fill gaps. Fairfax County has implemented a short-term solution for their special education staff with an addition of 30 minutes extra a day, resulting in a 7% increase in their pay. We would like to mirror this plan by adding that additional 30 minutes and pay increase to our special education staff effective immediately.
Time. Yes, were you next, Mara, right? Mara. Yes, yes.
Mara Schutler, I work at the middle school. The additional time would allow us to work uninterrupted on the necessary paperwork without the additional demands of other duties as assigned. We are asking that teachers be able to have the flexibility of working the 30 minutes before or after school, whatever fits their schedule better, as most are already working more than that anyway. We have a sample of what duties we would be able to work on during these 30 minutes that we will leave for the board to review. You will see that the amount of time needed to complete these tasks is well more than 30 minutes per day. We understand that ESSER funds are available now through the next 2 years.
which would be a short-term solution. However, we propose that by the end of those 2 years, and hopefully sooner, a permanent separate pay scale be developed as our duties will not lessen. The amount of time that we spend working outside of school is not COVID-related. We have been giving up our own personal time to complete paperwork since we signed our first contract to become special education teachers. Some may say, well, you knew what you signed up for when you became a special education teacher, and they are correct. But we also signed up for adequate funding, fully staffed departments, and time throughout the school year to complete the multitude of tasks assigned. However, when even just one of these things is lacking, it increases our workload tremendously, resulting in us having to work on our own time. We want to thank Dr. Saunders and all of the members of the board in advance for their careful consideration of our proposal. Kim, do you want to do this next part? Okay, I'm finished with my piece.
Singleton, I work at the middle school.
Can you just say it into the microphone so it's on? Yeah.
Slower.
People problems.
Thank you.
I'm Kimberly Singleton. I'm a teacher at the middle school. Special education teacher basic paperwork responsibilities. Here is a list of some of the basic paperwork responsibilities that are required of special educators with 15 students on their caseload and the average amount of time it takes to complete each activity. This does not include any addendums or other paperwork that could be assigned throughout the year. The first is 45 hours to write quality IEPs and set up meetings. The second, 24 hours to complete progress reports that are sent home every 4.5 weeks. The third, 36 hours dedicated to being pulled to work with students and manage our caseloads. This time is in addition to our day-to-day responsibilities, which is why we are asking for the additional 30 minutes with compensation. As you can see, we will still spend way more than 30 minutes each day working outside of our contracted hours. I moved to Manassas Park from the Pittsburgh area because I wanted to go to a small district that would make a difference. And I feel like we're able to do that here with what we're doing in our schools. I love working here. As a person who has two invisible disabilities, I want to help advocate with my students and for my students because I understand what they're going through on a personal level. And I feel like what we can do more. So.
Next, Margaret Pitak. Margaret Park, sorry.
Retired.
Sure did. She's gone, isn't she? Isn't she? Wow. Excuse me. That was a blast. See how long I've been here. Margaret Park. Forgive me for that.
Hi, I'm Margaret Park at the middle school and also a resident of Manassas Park. Good evening. My name is Margaret Park, and I am a 19-year resident of Manassas Park. And for the last 4 years, I have been an IA at Manassas Park Middle School. I guess you could say I was a career switcher. My degree is in dietetics. However, I stayed home to raise my 6 kids for 19 years. I was always told that being a stay-at-home mom was the hardest job. And while I can agree to an extent, I found that being in the classroom, working directly with up to 11 students with IEPs and 13 gen ed students each block for 7.5 hours a day, teaching, and specifically special education teaching, is the most challenging and undervalued job. What does an IA do? Well, I can only speak for the middle school, but we provide direct one-on-one instruction and small group instruction and testing. We help with modifying assignments, tests, and quizzes, and we provide behavior management. My students know they don't want Mama Park's voice, but they sure do respond when it comes out. The IAs don't have a planning block, since we have 4 classes per day. For my prep with teachers is more often done via text prior to the start of class or standing in the doorway as we're getting ready to rush in and start our class. I, along with a few other IAs in the district, are fortunate that we are part of a dual income family and don't rely on the IA income. However, the majority can be found holding second and third jobs after the school day and on the weekends just to make ends meet. This isn't acceptable. The IAs are invaluable and need to be recognized and compensated accordingly. Thank you for your time.
That's all, Madam Chair.
Okay. Thank you all for coming out tonight for public comments. It is appreciated. It's nice to have people in the room again. All right. Moving on to ongoing business. Next up, this capital improvement program plan update. Mr. Neff.
You won't hurt my feelings if you. Madam Chair, members of the board, I'm pleased to share the capital improvement project plan presentation with you tonight. As a refresh for each of you, CIP projects must meet the following criteria. An item must have a useful life of greater than 1 year. The project purchase results in addition of a fixed asset or extends the useful life of an existing one. And the individual assets rather than group assets must have a value of more than $5,000. This presentation aligns with strategic goal number 3 to provide effective and efficient support for student safety and success. I'd like to begin by reviewing where we have been. The next 2 slides will provide you a look at the capital projects completed last year. The 3 columns represent the project cost, and the FY 21 through 25 CIP plan, and the actual cost. So it was projected costs, that middle column. As you can see, some of the projects were not in their original CIP and fell under needed emergency repairs. The first project, the pre-K playground resurface, was an emergency replacement due to that surface deteriorating and evaporating and causing a tripping hazard for students. Project number 2, the classroom HVAC unit replacements. Mr. Simpson and ABM continue to replace the classroom HVAC units at the elementary school at Cougar and at the high school. Those are the units, if you remember, operate on the R22 refrigerant, which has kind of gone bye-bye or has been very expensive to find if you can find it. The exterior LED lighting at the elementary campus was completed in order to improve the evening hours when the elementary campus has so many evening activities, so it was a safety project for students and families and staff. The chiller replacement was a part of the FY20 project and could not be completed because of supply chain delays. That was completed last year. We were able to upgrade fitness center equipment at the middle school. It was estimated to be around a $50,000 cost. We replaced, I believe, 4 different items in the middle school at a cost of $9,500. The auditorium lighting was upgraded when it was determined that it was tied into the emergency lighting and the batteries in the auditorium. That was deemed a necessary repair as the fire marshal required us to complete that project. At the middle school, the gymnasium scoreboard was replaced. That was done so to take advantage of Wi-Fi as well as multiple different. I'm sorry, I lost my place.
Scoreboard.
The scoreboard upgrade was completed to reflect digital captions and the use of the wireless technology. So my apologies there. The security alarm system. The middle school was the only school that did not have a security system in place. The middle school has been there for 15 years, since 2006. So we were able to finally complete a security system for the middle school. We're able to replace the refrigeration units at Cougar, MPE, and the middle school. These were emergency repairs. One of the biggest costs in the CIP last year was the replacement of the visitor bleachers at Cougar Stadium. Those bleachers were in disrepair and were quite a safety hazard for anybody that came to an event at Cougar Stadium. It also brought us in line with ADA compliance by completing them and providing handicap seating for our visitors. And then we also replaced 3 outdoor air units at the athletic wing that was considered an emergency repair. Some other projects that really aren't capital projects, so to speak, but we were able to fund them through CARES Act to enhance the return to learn, including the water purifier filtration stations, the UV light air purification systems, the touchless faucets, urinals, toilets, and paper and towel dispensers in the restrooms at each of our 4 schools, the HEPA 6 systems and filters, and the portable air purifier systems. So this slide captures the total of the FY21 project, as well as providing the board with a listing of projects requested for the FY22 school year. I will go through each of these FY22 projects a little bit later in the presentation. I mentioned the FY22 projects on the previous slide. Here you will see the projects for fiscal year 23 through fiscal year 26, the 5-year plan. The outdoor air units at CES have been ordered, and there is a middle school units may need to be pushed back into next year because of supply chain delays. Both of these projects, which are high dollar projects, are eligible for ESSER and ARP matching funding, as well as the CLS FRF matching fund, which we were granted. We're going to apply for the grant, and the total amount was $681,000. So we would have to match to cover the $1.2 million for the middle school project. Some of the other projects on this slide are some high dollar projects, like refiguring the entrance at the high school. We've talked about this before. We have completed some conversations with some architectural firms regarding potential solutions to this problem, and we've placed that in FY24. Some of the other projects I will go through shortly. So projects for this year and beyond. The first one is to continue to replace the individual classroom HVAC units over the next 4 years. We were fortunate enough to speed up some of the project last year because of this CARES funding. Again, it's important to note the original units operated on the R22 refrigerant, which is now scarce. New units will not be operated, obviously, on the R22. Also, I would like to note that in the classrooms, these used to be window units, which were out in the middle of the classroom. Through the help of ABM and Mr. Simpson, individual classroom closets are being built for these units, which will decrease the noise level in those classrooms. The high school roof project, we've talked about this over the past couple meetings at a cost of $1.584 million. I'm happy to say that that project has begun. It started last weekend with rocks being removed from the roof of the high school. They did begin to work on some of the membrane previously this past week. They are anticipating completing 2 to 3 classroom spaces per day. And I'm happy to report that Mr. Simpson shared that the noise level was very, very limited during the first couple days of that particular project. This project notates the gymnasium gym floor and the damage that's being done to that every time the bleachers are being wheeled in and out from the wall. I did receive an email from Mr. Forgas today asking if there was an opportunity to expedite the project, as not only do we have broken wheels that are causing the damage, but we also have some grease that is being left on the floor, and some of the actual bleachers themselves are starting to splinter and break apart. Also, by replacing the gymnasium bleachers, we could become ADA compliant like we were or are in the football stadium. The next slide, I'm sure, is one that will make Dr. Saunders happy, to upgrade the phone system, the telecommunication system here at in the school division. The projected cost is about $17,000 a year. It's a project that we roll in over a 3-year cycle, 2022 through 24. The current systems will be upgraded to the voice over internet protocol, which allows for the use of the current network infrastructure. It is industry standard and provides accessibility, portability, and scalability. The outdoor air units we've talked about at Cougar. That project is well underway. Last year, the bid was put out. I believe it was in March. A vendor was selected, units were ordered. We're anticipating that 2 of the 3 units will be delivered in the middle of November to early December, and the 3rd unit coming shortly after that. Oops, let me go back. I did mention the middle school unit, and I've lumped these 2 together because they're a similar project. The middle school project is for 6 outdoor air units. We anticipate that project will go well into next year if it's anything like the units at Cougar, in which we had the delays in the shipping. And that's a part of the grant that I spoke about earlier, the matching grant, which we believe we will be able to obtain at least $600,000 towards that cost of $1.2 million. Transportation. Recommended replacement of buses should occur every 12 to 15 years. Currently, the division has 4 buses that exceed the 15-year lifespan. Of course, we have not purchased any buses over the past 2 years, and we're very fortunate that we didn't have to run our buses a lot last year due to the pandemic. Our plan is to replace 2 this coming year. In fact, we believe we will be ordering prior to December 1st in order to take advantage of some price savings for this year. So we'll try to get right back on track by ordering 2 to 3 buses every year. And again, we can use ESSER funds to purchase these buses. The elementary lot was resurfaced a few years ago. The secondary lots are showing a lot of their age and wear and tear. It's recommending that milling and resurfacing occur in FY23. The locker room at the high school, the men's locker room is the locker room on the right. The women's locker room is the one on the left. You can see full-size lockers in the men's locker room. I believe, although I cannot speak definitively about this, that was done initially in order to accommodate football equipment. However, there's simply not enough lockers in that locker room to accommodate the number of kids in the football program. And so we have students sharing lockers with their equipment, so we would propose to do something similar as to the girls' locker room, where there are half units so that everybody would have their own locker. The fencing project was another project that we almost pulled the trigger on last year. We're proposing to fence in the Cougar Elementary School playgrounds right around the fence line there in that picture. Not so much to keep outsiders from using our facilities in off hours, but more so to make sure it's a safe issue for our students. If you've ever been to Cougar when a recess is going on or when PE classes are going on, there are a number of kids out in that area that could get away. And so by having the fencing there, we want to make sure that we provide a safe environment for them. The next project is the high school fitness center. Obviously, this is an area that is used by our athletic teams, but also used by our PE classes daily. So they receive a lot of wear and tear. The last refresh on the fitness center occurred in 2017 with a minimal upgrade just to replace broken equipment. By 2024, this area will be ready for a facelift. And then the next 4 projects are ones that we've discussed for a number of years, which include a larger price tag, the reconfiguration of the high school entrance area there. You can see from coming in the doors to looking out at the doors. Prior to a few years ago, students would enter the unlocked door and could easily escape around the handicap area to get to just about anywhere they wanted to in the building. Measures have been put in place the last few years, including a buzzer system in which they have to be buzzed into the school so all the doors are locked. And we took it a step further 2 years ago by placing a greeter right there at the top of those stairs to make sure that any students that are buzzed into the high school, that they are escorted to the office to check in prior to heading to any place else in the building. I mentioned earlier that we do have architectural drawings for this, and this project is estimated to cost around $850,000. The next two projects do go hand in hand, the construction of a transportation facility as well as construction of a maintenance facility. Construction of these two facilities would not only allow us additional training space and storage space for supplies and equipment and our staff, but also would include bays for our vehicles so that Aaron Tennant, Mr. Tennant wouldn't have to be outside in the elements to work on our buses during the winter or the hot summers. We've had some preliminary discussions, and here's the maintenance facility, which is located in the back of the middle school. We've had some preliminary discussions about really beefing up our career technical education program. We feel like this would be a fabulous way to do so by repurposing the transportation and the maintenance facility in the back of the middle school, which could really give us a thriving CTE program for middle and high school students. Then the last project to review is one we've also talked about, is the addition of restrooms outside by the baseball field and the practice field so that students and visitors to our games or to our practices would not have to go into a building or use a porta potty on site. It really does provide a safety issue if we open our buildings for guests to go into the building to use restrooms during those events. So we'd like to do an addition to this concession stand area to include restrooms for students as well as for visitors. So the next steps will be the public hearing at the work session, which will be, I believe, November 1st. So, Madam Chair, that does conclude the CIP presentation tonight.
Okay, public hearing November 1st. Thank you. Any questions from the board?
We had a bunch, so
I
can go last.
Okay. Starting with Carlos, any questions?
No, I was just kind of looking through presentation here. I'm sorry, I have it pulled up. It was all the emergencies, all the emergency fixes that had to be implemented. And we have mentioned in the past, we know what the high dollar items are, right? The big stuff, the air handlers, the ACs, the buses. But, from a facilities management standpoint, and I know we don't have dedicated, Paul's done the best that he can, but the issue, for instance, with the bleachers and stuff like that, it would be helpful not to wait until something breaks to basically start to have like a plan, a facilities management plan. We have a small, we're a small school system, so we know certain things are going to happen. But there's some stuff that we should see it. The life cycle of certain things, it's no secret to anybody, right? Just like we're saying, buses 12 to 15 years, issues like bleachers. On my daily walk, when I go walk the dogs, near Manassas Park Elementary School, that little area, that roundabout area, in which there's this wooden plank in there. Right now there's a hole in it. Those things have been there since the school opened. So I honestly don't know. I have brought this thing up in the past, and it's just like, from a facilities management standpoint, it's like, do we get them some sort of cycle, so at least we know, for instance, that we're going to be checking. A good example was like in 2017, when we had to replace some of the stuff that was some of the equipment, because it was downright dangerous. The equipment in the exercise room for the kids, So things like, objects like that is what I'm trying to get across. That it doesn't have to be anything in six figures, but we're getting, we're bleeding by paper cuts.
So I can tell you that ABM and Mr. Simpson, they do have preventative maintenance plans in place. So they do complete PMs on a regular basis on like kitchen equipment,
Right.
HVAC equipment.
Right.
I agree with you. I've seen, and we have replaced several boards at that outdoor classroom there at the elementary school. I was telling Dr. Saunders last week, we were talking about the painting on the handrails. It's one of those things that I walk by and see all the time, and I don't see it. That's on me. I need to see that. I need to address that. When I see that with Mr. Simpson and the ABM crew, just like those wooden boards that you're speaking to, Mr. Vargas.
All right, thank you very much.
Sure.
That was just,
But I know they are completing, ABM is completing PMs on a regular basis with a lot of our equipment, and if they don't have the capabilities to do it, like we had, I believe it was K.H. Smith that was here when we had that gas issue the other day, checking out the outdoor air handlers. So we are doing that on a regular basis.
thank you.
Sure.
Can I just add something as well? To your point, Mr. Vargas, we've had some great conversations with City Manager Palco and started to talk about ways in which we can work together in order to understand where all of our assets are and how we continue to manage those. And so those conversations were very good. We had them last week, and so I expect we might have some more information around that as we go forward.
Even to the point that we talked about like a shared maintenance and transportation facility with them.
Before I let you start, Paul, hi. Thanks for joining us. I didn't know if you knew in the City Hall building, masks are required.
I look for it.
Yeah. Thanks.
I'm not going to
Okay.
religious exemption, constitutional exemption, and common sense exemption.
Okay. Cool.
I'll share with you.
Okay. All right. Paul?
Okay. I got a bunch. All right. So looking at the very beginning of the presentation, the cost slides, I mean, some of those are, the first one that jumped out, I mean, I think I heard you answer the question I'm going to ask was the costs for the HVAC in the classrooms are listed at $25K and they're showing up at $125 or $110,000. That's the accelerated portion that was used through the CARES funding?
That's correct, and through savings that we had last year. As you remember, we've traditionally in the past been a pay-as-you-go model.
Right.
So leftover savings, we've been able to pay for projects like that. And I've had conversations with Mr. Lyon about setting aside specific budget lines for CIP pre-projects going forward.
Right. So it just wasn't, 400% over budget. It was.
No,
Okay.
that's correct.
All right. Just making sure.
Yeah.
Some of the other, and I just wanted like the fitness center upgrades. We estimated for the middle school, we estimated $50,000 and it came in at $9,500. The high school, we're also estimating at $50,000. I'm just curious, is it going to end up being $9,500 again, or I just want to make sure that we're not
Sure.
over asking the city.
No, good question. So as opposed to completing an entire refresh of all the equipment in the middle school fitness center, we took a look at the equipment that was broken and not fixable, and we replaced those 4 or 5 individual exercise machines or bikes.
Right.
I think as we get towards that time period with the high school, we're going to probably have to evaluate what needs to be replaced, what we can still use, and I would anticipate that we would be less than $50,000.
Gotcha. Okay.
But that is more of a if we did everything in there.
Okay. Carlos kind of brought up one of my other points was just, over, basically 250% of what we planned were associated to non-planned expenses with capital improvement. And while, again, you can't predict the unpredictable, Carlos's point was kind of one of the things that was, how can we start to get to a point, almost like with accounting, as it depreciates, when it gets to the end of that life, now we, okay, it's now worth $0. We should start expecting the replacement of it. And now I wouldn't expect you to see a handrail every day, so that's kind of, it's kind of
No,
one of
but I
those things
should.
So moving to the HVAC classroom one, you answered. Sorry, I went through and just did them in order. Got that one, got that one. The bleachers in the high school. That's not a repairable, like, I see where I'm in that gym all the time, so I see that giant grease thing, but I was just curious, that's not something that could be fixed as opposed to a full repair, or is it kind of like the cost of the repair doesn't make sense versus?
I think it's twofold. Those bleachers are 22 years old. They are not ADA compliant. So I don't know if Mr. Forgas has checked on the parts for those projects
Right.
or not. Certainly it would be less expensive if we could do that as opposed to a complete replacement. However, the ADA compliant issue is one that I think we probably want to address if we have funding to be able to complete that project.
Okay. You answered my question about the buses. I know we were behind schedule. This is from the slide with regards to the resurfacing. The resurfacing makes complete sense. The only question I had was more so, the bigger concern to me with that portion of it was that we couldn't find any documentation of when it was done last. So the record control aspect of it was what really kind of, I'm assuming that since then we've established something that's going to long-term archiving of.
Correct, and I
Okay.
think we've been able to really document these types of projects through Keystone.
Gotcha.
And the money that we've spent and the detailing of that.
All right. You answered the gym. You actually answered this question already, because one of my questions was going to be with regards to transportation and the maintenance facility. Are there opportunities to work with the city for joint? And then the last two questions I have are more, I would love to see the fencing for cougars sooner rather than later, because I know we've worried about kids drifting off into the woods.
Yes.
So that was kind of more of just a statement. The one I wanted to ask about is the bathrooms for the baseball stadium. And the reason I ask is now that we have Ticket Spigot for all athletic events, we should be able to find out the or average attendance over a couple, so I was just curious what our attendance is, because, if it's anything like some of, I go to most of the games, but, if it's 15, 20, 30 people, I'd much rather bus them in a golf cart over to the football stadium to use the bathroom than pay $750,000 for a bathroom. So that's kind of what I'm just trying to understand the impact of the ask and how many people would we truly be helping by, that kind of an investment.
I think that is fair. I would also say the other part of it is, our football and our soccer teams also practice out on that lower field below the baseball field.
Gotcha. Okay.
So there's an opportunity for usage by our student athletes going to practice during practice as opposed to coming all the way back into the building.
That makes sense. I just wanted to make sure for an investment like that it's really going to have the impact we want it to. So I just want to understand it.
Yes, it's an expensive project. It's something, if we have the funding, we would love to do.
Gotcha.
Maybe won't be able to do it.
And that is it for me. Thank you.
Dante, questions?
I just had a question about, the funding for between FY '23 and 23 and 26. Like, are these prices like market prices for now, or was there a percentage of contingency included?
That's a
for
great
inflation?
question. I can tell you, Mr. Simpson is kind of at his wit's end in estimating the cost of repairs and new projects. I think when we initially talked about the high school roof, we talked about $350,000, I believe, and it came in at $1.584 million. So it's his best guess. I know that he spoke with a fencing company, for example, the project at Cougar with the fencing around the playgrounds. He did speak with a fencing company about per square foot, and he could kind of go up and estimate the amount of square footage and so forth. So that's where that $30,000 figure came in. But I don't know if we have any clue about what's going to happen with supply prices and the cost of labor.
Thank you.
Paul asked so many good comprehensive questions. It kind of negates the need. Although I did want to point out another Cougar issue that would be handled with the fencing. I know there's been a problem a couple of times with animals, loose animals in the
Yes.
neighborhood. So that would also be helped with the fencing. After the public hearing on November 1st, what's the timeline with the city? And how can we be of assistance when you plan to present to the city, that sort of stuff? Do you have a timeline following?
Right.
The
I
first?
have to share the 23 through 27 capital improvement project plan with them by November 1st so that the city manager can begin to prep for his budget.
Okay.
There will be a presentation that will be done for the city council members. I'm not sure exactly when that is. I believe that was in January last year, maybe December. And then the Planning Commission is another presentation that would need to take place. I believe that was at the end of February or the 1st of March last year. So, but like Dr. Saunders said, we've had some really good conversations with the city manager, and I'm looking forward to working closely with them on some of these projects. And, you know, some of this is a wish list, and a lot of it's need, though.
Just keep us appraised of it so we can, participate in the process and, go down with this, with you when you go down to the city or whatever we can do to help.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. Up next, fiscal year 21 budget review. Mr. Lyon.
Yes, you can get that.
Oh, I'm not going to do that again. Well, I'm not sure where my presentation is. Okay. Yeah, that's not it.
Yeah.
Yes.
We can pull it up here.
Oh, they can see it? Okay.
Yep.
So I'll just go ahead and start, and then I'll let the presentation catch up.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the board, good evening. Tonight, my first presentation is to provide a summary of FY21, which was the budget for school year 2020-2021. The budget does support all three goals of the strategic plan. The budget, when you break the FY21 budget down in regards to revenue sources, 64% of our revenue came from the state of Virginia. 27% came from the city, the governing body of Manassas Park. 8% came from local other sources. And 1% came, I'm sorry, 8%, 1% came from the city and local revenues. Expenditures were broken down: salaries, benefits, and operational expenses. 82% of our expenditures were salaries and benefits, which is typical of any school system. So a majority of our costs are the personnel. When we look at the FY21 budget summary, in regards to revenue, the school year 2021 was an unusual year. And when we look at our revenue sources, we have, altogether, we had $46 million in revenue. From the federal funds, we had $2.3 million. And our general fund, which consists of city transfers, local revenues, and state revenues, was $42.2 million. Our food services was almost $1.3 million. And then we have a medical trust, which is used to pay for insurance for our retirees at $155,000. When we look at our expenditures, our federal funds, after expenditures, which were about $2.3 million, we have a small beginning balance for this current fiscal year of $2,594. Our general fund, we had a surplus of $911,702, which we had transferred back to the city. Food services, when you take a look at revenue and expenditures there, revenue was down mainly because of we weren't selling, we didn't have food sales. The students were remote. And we were giving away food for due to the pandemic. And our expenditures were about $1.4 million. So we did go into the fund balance for the food service fund at about $187,000. And the medical trust, we went into the fund balance of about $804. So looking at the fund balances at the end of the fiscal year, federal funds, we had a ending balance of $2,594. The general fund, after the transfer is complete, we will zero it out. We will not have any excess left over. The food services fund balance will be at $426,000, and the medical trust will be at $241,000. When comparing fiscal year 21 to fiscal year 20, you do notice some stark differences. In regards to federal funds, our federal revenue was up $1.2 million over the previous fiscal year. Again, this is all pandemic related. The general fund, state revenues were about $2 million higher than fiscal year 20. Our city transfer was around $300,000 higher, and the local was about $100,000 more. Total revenue for the general fund, well, I guess it's at $42,261,000. Then food services, you can see a stark difference there. The federal revenue there was about $100,000 less, and the local revenue was almost $340,000 less. But we had the previous year again because the students were remote. So total revenue was at 1.7. So you can see the stark differences there. And again, the expenditures, you can see the stark differences from one year to the next and how we came up with our fund balances. So after all is said and done for fiscal year 21, we do have 4 what we call carryovers, purchase orders that were not completed, but they were in process. Copier contract, we're requesting to be carried over to fiscal year 22 for $51,000. They were not able to complete all the replacements of the machines by the end of June 30. So we have to carry that over into this year. The athletic striping, I believe there was a material supply problem, and it had to be carried over into this year. There was a gator and a power washer that couldn't be delivered by the end of June. And then this is the security system, I believe, that Mr. Neff referred to, that there was a remaining balance because the work had not been completed yet of $33,000. So this will be in my budget amendment. This $107,000 transfers over into my budget amendment. Yes.
So this is above and beyond the $907,000 going back to the city, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I just want to make sure that this is being transferred, but this is not part of the give back. I mean, the take back. I'm sorry.
Correct.
Okay.
The fund balance that we had, $911,000, does not include this $107,000.
Okay.
This is separate.
And this is going to be a similar process that we're going to have when we deal with the roof potentially.
Right. My next presentation, I come back to the roof.
Gotcha.
So this presentation feeds into my next one with this carryover.
Right, that's
amount.
true. I got it.
Okay.
It's a bit similar. Okay.
And that concludes my presentation for the FY21 fiscal summary.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Lyon?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that update. Moving on to that referred to presentation, the fiscal year 22 proposed budget amendment. Again, Mr. Lyon.
Okay, Madam Chair, members of the board. Down here. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm confused. So confused. All right, here we go. All right. Thank you for your patience, everyone. All right, my next presentation is fiscal year 22 budget amendment. 2 times a year typically, from what I've learned, is we ask for a budget amendment if it's needed to keep our appropriations in line with compliance. This budget amendment addresses activities that support all 3 goals of the strategic plan. The first thing I want to point out in this budget amendment is the revenue requests, and this kind of leads back to Mr. Vargas's question. The first item I'm asking the city to fund, and this is, I'm asking for additional revenue for this budget from the city, is $107,000 for those items I just previously mentioned I need to carry over into this budget. On top of that, we're asking for additional funding to match the state funds for the Cougar and the middle school air handlers that Mr. Neff had mentioned for $518,000. The remaining of that balance is covered by those grants, the state grant and the federal grant. Remaining funding needed for the high school roof project, which I believe Ms. Kirkland just asked about, the $384,000 that we need to finish out the project. Right now, they did fund us at $1.2 million. They have given us that money, but we do need another $384,000 to meet the need of the contract. Furniture for the new building, $100,000. Because of inflation and material demand, initially I thought maybe $50,000, but we met with the city manager, and through our discussion we realized we probably need to double that, and hopefully it'll come in under, but we're asking for that. And moving expenses into the building, $25,000, adds up to $1.1 million and some change, and I'm asking for additional revenue from the city. I also want to point out that there is additional revenue from the state and federal level that comes into play that supports a majority of these items I'm presenting in this amendment. The first one is the state grant. That is the matching grant for the air handlers at $681,000. ESSER 2 federal grant, $641,000. And that is the balance. Our original fiscal 22 budget did include some funds from ESSER 2 to be appropriated originally. So this is the balance of the grant that wasn't designated yet.
Allocated.
Yeah, obligated. As ESSER 3 grant, $1.6 million, and then we received a lot of surprises in grants from the state or from the federal government since the pandemic. We did not plan on this 611 to 619 funding. These were additional ARP monies that came in a couple months ago for special students with disabilities and supporting their learning. So we'll receive additional reimbursement revenue for $3.1 million. Expenditures I'm requesting to be added to our current budget. Again, the carryover, and I've broken these down to local expenditures and federal and state expenditures. Local expenditures, carryover POs are $107,000 again, and basically I repeat the same items I just reviewed. And then down below, the state, federal, and reimbursed expenses, again, I'm just repeating the same revenue items as the expense items, for a total of $4.2 million in expenditures. I broke down a high-level line item analysis for the ESSER 2 expenditures here, which add up to $1.1 million for the total grant. Now, as I said before, $483,000 of that has already been appropriated in the current budget. So I'm only asking for the money that wasn't appropriated yet for $641,000. ESSER 3 is a grant we will span over 2 years. So I have broken this out so you can see where those monies will fall. A majority of the monies will be planned on spending this fiscal year, but some of those are for personnel, which we will span over 2 years into FY23. So as you go down the column there, you see grand total of $2.2 million. Again, $615,000 was appropriated in the current budget last year when you developed it. So I'm asking for the balance of $1.6 million. And these are the unexpected ARP monies for students with disabilities. So I give you a high-level summary of the balances, the approved balances, my proposed additional amounts, and then the new totals with the proposed amendment. Now, the difference down at the bottom right-hand corner is $207,000. That is the fund balance of the Food Services Fund. That is not local money, but I wanted to display that so you can see that everything balanced out. Excuse me. This is a analysis. This is the FY22 approved budget. This is the FY '22 proposed budget amendment. And this is total, the proposed and the amended, and the amendment side-by-side comparison at a high level total so you can see the differences between the categories of spending and revenue. And with that, that concludes my presentation.
Now, because it's over the threshold, we have to have a public hearing, right?
Correct.
Okay, so the public hearing will be
November
next-
1st. Yep.
The 1st.
With the CIP.
Oh, so, okay, so we've got 2 public hearings on November 1st. Will we turn around and vote on it that night, or
No.
we're going to vote on it the following?
The following
business
meeting, right.
Okay, all right. Rarely do we turn around and quickly vote on it, but if it's really a crisis, but I think, yeah. Okay. Does the board have any questions?
The only question that I have when I was looking at this is the sustainability of the positions that are proposed under the ESSER grants. I mean, you're talking about, stuff that we need, like special ed teachers, and a grants manager. That's a loaded, that's essentially a loaded expenditure of $85,000 a year. And if I saw the others correctly, the other ones are in the 40s, right? So my concern is about the sustainability of those positions once this grant money essentially is spent. Where do we go? I mean, this is something that is going to be automatically added because, on the one hand, we heard special ed teachers tonight asking for some more direct funding. So, it's just like, yes, 80% of our expenditures are essentially in salaries, but I have a little, the sustainability of some of those positions, it kind of jumps real high, especially, but I don't know if that's going to be truly a problem, knowing that, during our last meeting, we said we had X amount, of positions that hadn't been filled. So it's just like, okay, so we don't have certain positions filled, but we're looking for. So at the end of the day, is it all going to come out in the wash, or are we going to be in a precarious situation from a budget perspective a year and a half, 2 years down the road?
Well, it certainly would be a challenge. We have discussed the sustainability of some of those positions and the need for those positions will probably outlive that funding. We certainly, I imagine we'll try to build them into the budget at that time and go from there. We may have to make a tough decision at those junctures.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Anything else? All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Indicate as well that the positions that we have posted to use for ESSER funds, when we post them, we do indicate that they are grant-funded positions as well. And so there's a time limit or a funding limit on those in those circumstances.
So it's part of your.
It's part of the conversation that we have along the way, but
right.
Yeah, but I would agree to your point that we also have vacancies that high-quality staff can fill into those vacancies as well if those positions are no longer needed.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah, I was going to say that's generally my experience with these kind of temporary positions is there's a shift of staff.
I mean, as long as there's a balance, knowing that, I mean, essentially $1 million is going back, to the city, 900 and change. So, I just want to make sure that we're in that decent position when those grants monies dry up.
Sure. I agree.
That's all. And you've answered my question. Thank you.
Oh, you bet. One thing, Ms. Kirkland, is on November 3rd, I will be presenting to the governing body this budget amendment.
Okay.
And they will have a public hearing also for this request, and it combined with because they're doing a budget amendment also to the governing body.
Okay.
So they will do a public hearing for the combined amendments at their level. But they've asked me to come and present November 3rd to give them some time to look at it. And December is when they take their action.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, back to Mr. Neff with the proposed 22-23 school calendar.
Madam Chair, as you recall, at the previous meeting, I discussed two different calendar options. I shared with the board this week those two particular options. So not only are those two options before you tonight, also the link to the survey that we will put on the website. It's not my intention that there's discussion about the calendars tonight. This is a way for me to provide you these two options for you to review and reflect on over the next 2 weeks, so that there could be discussion at the work session on November 1st. My thoughts are that after that discussion, both calendars would be posted on the website, along with a link to the survey, the Google survey for parents, students, all of our stakeholders to complete. Get that feedback, and continue conversations, and have a calendar in front of you to approve at our December meeting.
Okay.
So we're talking about a process here. It's not something that trying to run up the flagpole and run it back down. We want to be able to get a lot of public input. Want you to have some time with it to really dissect it and reflect on it,
Okay.
and be able to have those discussions at our work session or our November meeting. Certainly, if you have any questions regarding either of these options, please feel free to email me over the next couple weeks. I'm happy to respond, and certainly then you can share it with your board members.
Yeah, if a board member emails you regarding the calendar, if you could just email the entire group back in response, that would be helpful.
I would be happy to do so.
Okay, very good. All right.
When was the survey going out? Potentially.
When is the intention for the survey to go out? Just because I know I have a question about the survey, and I know that the results of the survey are going to kind of dictate our conversations.
So my idea would be that after the work session on the 2nd, we would put the two calendar options on our website. We would do a communication statement to the community, and we would link the survey. So if there's something on the survey that you think doesn't make sense or needs to be fixed, just email me.
Yeah.
I'll put it out there to all of you, and certainly we can take a look at it.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. All right. All right. Did we want to take a 5-minute recess?
Sure.
All right. We're going to take a 5-minute recess really fast. We'll convene again at 8:17 because there's a lot of noise in the hallway, and you want to. There's some noise out in the hallway. I want to see what that's about.
Tonight, I will be presenting a preliminary enrollment report based on our fall membership, the September 30 numbers. Before I jump into this, I really would like to express a big thank you to staff in the buildings who actually are a large part of making sure this data is accurate, from teachers taking accurate attendance to front office staff and attendance staff and our building principals who are verifying and following up on any questions or concerns about kids and are they in the building or not, or did they move. It really is a big lift on their part, and my role is small. I'm just make sure it all looks, it's put together for the state report. So I just like to say that out loud publicly before we move into this. This presentation aligns with Strategic Goal 1. And the first thing is just as a refresher, reminder, review of what we are talking about tonight. It is membership. This is just a count of all the students in our division that we are responsible for, regardless of placement. So students who are placed outside the district for service or other reasons, those kids are counted in our fall membership. This is the one and only time during the 4 data collections we do for student records that we get a flat number. This is just a raw count of how many kids we have. We do track this information every month, as in the and it's presented to you guys in consent agenda as far as where we are regarding membership. So this is not ADM, which drives a lot of our funding in the spring. This is just a count of students. Now to the exciting part. This is the part you've been waiting for.
Ooh.
Yes. Our first slide will be the enrollment at the division level. This slide and the next 2 slides, which will show building level data, are all going to be laid out the same way. We've got 3 years of historical data from the fall. We have end of year data, so you can see where we ended last year, what we projected for the fall, September 30 this year, and then what our actual is this year. So we projected 3390. Our actuals right now are 3395, and we projected 3392. So we are pretty good in that realm. We are down from end of year last year, but that's to be expected. We had a larger graduating class and a smaller kindergarten class coming in. This is anticipated, and we know this is going to continue on as larger classes graduate, and those kindergarten classes come in at the level they come in. So this is where we stand at the division level. If we move on to our elementary campus, and I will have one correction on this slide and the next, that end of year 2020 for MPES should be 21, so I apologize for that. At Cougar, our actuals are at 710 students. This is K through 2. We are under what we projected. We are under where we ended. But I think the main contributing factor you'll see is that we projected 240 students at kindergarten, and we're sitting right now at about 226 students. 240 is the kind of number we've settled on for that incoming kindergarten class over the past several years. As you recall, several years ago, we had almost 300 students in kindergarten. You're going to see that body of kids come back in the next slide. But over time, we've kind of settled on that 240 number, and I think that might be something we re-examine. I think Mr. Lyon and I are going to talk some more about projections and how we do things. If that needs to be re-examined, we'll do that. At MPE, right now, we are sitting at 738 students. We projected 741, so we are in the ballpark there. We are down from the end of year, 753. Contributing factor that I see there is that we had a larger class, 5th graders going to the middle school, and we've got a smaller class coming in to 3rd grade. So that's the major factor, along with some of the withdrawals over the course of the summer. Moving on to our secondary campus. Our middle school is at 821, which is actually over what we projected, and also down from our end of year. But as you can see, the big number there is at 297. That's that original kindergarten class we were talking about several years ago that shocked everybody, that we had 300 kindergarten students. But those kids have moved on, and there will be freshmen at the high school now. The one other interesting little pop as far as The increase is, for some reason, we'll have to maybe dig deeper. We've got a large increase of 8th graders that came in. So that is explaining that little jump from what we projected to where we are right now. And then finally at the high school, we're at 1126, which is over our end of year, but in line with our projection. Keeping in line, those 297 students are now coming in. I believe the high school class, graduating class last year was in that 250-ish range. So there's there's that 40 kids that is jumping up that from end of year. And that concludes the enrollment presentation.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
Yes, sir.
So one, and this is kind of focused at the high school and really around the dropout rate.
Right.
I know last year the state suspended the accreditation standards.
Right.
I'm assuming they've been re-implemented this year. Are we tracking? Because my concern is, last year's, juniors to this year's seniors, and I'm guessing they're on, this year's kids are having a little tougher time because they're transitioning back into the classroom and stuff like that. Are we at any kind of risk? Because we were already on the borderline with graduation dropout rates.
I can't answer that directly, but
Good evening. Yes, we're always on the line, but I'm happy to say that our high school staff, counseling staff, our administrators, our teachers, case managers, whether they're special education or ESOL, have been working diligently to track those students to see what kind of credits they still need. Remember that all the waivers are gone this year,
Right.
So there's groups of kids that had various waivers for verified credits or locally awarded credits over the last few years. So it's a big undertaking to track all of that, but I'm confident that our staff is able to account for that. They formatted a student resource team at the high school, which is really going to dig into those students who are at high risk for dropout.
Thank you, Pam.
Yep.
And to follow up, I have been meeting with Mr. Forrest to see what kind of things I can do to help support that tracking that they're trying to implement. It's a lot, and whatever I can lend support for that, trying to work with them. But they're taking the big steps of keeping track of that.
Cool. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Just a quick question about, I'm always impressed about how kind of bang on you are with the numbers. But I think a lot of that goes into the legwork that you do prior to, leading up to, and the outreach that you do in the years, like the previous year, the kind of the internal census data that you're able to gather from students, being able to see who's in the home, who's coming up. And you had probably a substantial interruption in your ability to do that. How is it going to be? How do you think that's going to impact your projections moving forward? Have you been able to recoup some of that data already? Is InfoSnap helping?
To be honest with you, generally we have we've had different ideas of how we project these numbers, and in the years past we looked at, do we do a certain percentage increase? Do we do that? To be honest with you, the truest method we found and the most accurate is that cohort kind of roll up from one grade level to the next. And there's times in our our spreadsheet where we're like, well, what if it was a 1% increase or 2% decrease? But we're shooting in the dark, to be honest with you. And I think the most accurate has been that roll up into the next grade level. And I think that's a process that we will probably continue. We can always examine if that continues to work, but so far it's been fairly accurate.
Right.
If that answers your question.
That actually does. Thank
Okay.
you. Anything else from the rest of the board?
Okay.
I did have a question about the numbers at CES. Just wondering that I don't see the pre-K numbers. Are they not?
Correct.
They're not included.
Right. The reason being is that they're technically not part of the fall membership as far as our counts, and then in the long run our ADM. But for pre-K, we are at about 130 students through all our pre-K programs. Head Start, BPI, ACSC, I always say that, get those letters. Yeah, so we're about 130, which is full capacity, I believe, which we were not at last year.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much for the presentation. All right, moving on to superintendent update. Dr. Saunders.
We've had a lot of fun with the PowerPoints tonight, huh? Appreciate everyone's patience, and we're continuing to learn the process. I don't even know if it's up here. Let's go with that. So I just want to share briefly tonight an update on where we are as far as our mitigation and our COVID numbers. I seem to share this at each board meeting and share some updates, and so we've kind of condensed it down to one slide. I will say again that our amazing staff and families and students are doing a wonderful job. Our nurses, Nurse Shaw, all of the nurses across the division are really just going above and beyond, as are the teachers, the principals. Every staff member is really doing a great job as we work through the continuing changes of our global pandemic. So I share with you tonight some information here. At the top, you see our mitigation framework that we've been using for this school year. You see in the bottom right-hand corner some information about our transmission rates based on the CDC, VDH CDC website. You can see for the region or locality for Manassas Park, we are currently in the moderate transmission level. And we do look as well into Prince William County as we work, play, visit in Prince William County, and they continue to be in the high-level transmission. I share with you our continued collection of positive case and quarantine data for August 23rd, 2021 through October 15th, 2021. Our total positive case investigations are 18. That includes 507 contacts. The total close contacts that have been quarantined through that time period is 254. And I would just indicate that's about half of the close contacts, or the contacts that we investigated. So we have a good portion of our students and staff that are vaccinated, and that keeps them in the school. So this is the information as of today. And we will continue to be in the moderate, substantial, that tier B, tier C, based on our transmission level. We continue to find ways to limit limit or modify in-person gatherings. We have transitioned to virtual parent-teacher conferences. So the teachers in the division will be reaching out to families to schedule their conference and to make sure that we continue that connection for their educational program, for students' educational program. So with that, that is the end of my presentation this evening. Questions?
Any questions from the board? Just for clarification for those who might want to look at it at home, the mitigation frameworks on our website at mpark.net?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. On to new business, the MCPS Bullying Prevention Month proclamation. All right. Go ahead and read it, and then I will allow somebody to do the honor of making the motion. We do this annually, and certainly there are a lot of wraparound programs, which I know Dr. Saunders will include on a later agenda, but we had a quite full agenda this evening, we were just doing the proclamation this evening, but the MPCS Bullying Prevention Proclamation. Whereas school bullying has become an increasingly significant problem in the United States and Virginia, and whereas over 20% of youth in the United States are estimated to be involved in bullying each year, either as a bully or a victim, and whereas an estimated 160,000 students in kindergarten through 12th grade miss school every day due to a fear of being bullied, And whereas bullying can take many forms, including verbal, physical, and most recently in cyberspace, and can happen in many places on or off school grounds. And whereas it is important for Virginia parents, students, teachers, and school administrators to be aware of bullying and to encourage discussion of the problem as a school community. And whereas MPCS has developed a model policy on anti-bullying to encourage positive behaviors and to eliminate bullying behaviors. Now, therefore, the Manassas Park City School Board recognizes the month of October 2021 as MPCS Bullying Prevention Month, with the intention that the issue of bullying and its prevention be discussed in schools and classrooms during that time. Adopted by the Manassas Park City School Board on this date. Do I have a motion on this proclamation?
Move to approve the Manassas Park City Schools Bullying Prevention Proclamation as written.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And I look forward to hearing more about our programs related to this in an upcoming session. All right, upcoming meetings. Our school board work session is Monday, November 1st, 2021, 6:59 p.m. here in the school board meeting room. Our school board and governing body joint session, Saturday, November 13th, 9 a.m. here in this room as well. And then our next regular school board meeting, Monday, November 15th at 6:59 p.m. here in the school board meeting room. Board member comments. Do we have any? I do have a comment before I let everyone go. It was a big weekend for the Manassas Park High School band. Mr. Bouchelon had posted about it on Facebook, and I could not let it go. Mr. Bouchelon has been chasing the score of an 80 in his band competition for 11 years now, since he has been working with the kids at Manassas Park High School. The highest he'd ever gotten was a 79.47. So Dick Christian Leon told me a little while ago. This weekend at James Madison University, our high school marching band scored an 85.15, their highest score ever, winning the competition. So shout out to all of those talented, dedicated kids, and of course to Mr. Legrand, Mr. Bouchelon, Bouche, and Ms. Lowry for all their hard work and dedication. I know it's a huge deal to the students and to those teachers, and I would be remiss if I did not mention it. Thank you for an incredible month and a great meeting. We're going to take another 5-minute break, but this time to go into closed session, so we need to clear the room. So with that, 5-minute recess.